Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is the Board of Education business meeting, which I'll touch on in a moment, for August 9th. And Becky, if you would please call the order.
Ms. Dunbar? Here. Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Ms. Diesel? Here. Mr. White?
Here. And would you all please stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I do have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe everyone did receive a copy of the addendums to the agenda, correct? And of course, being right before school starts, this is very common. We have both certified and classified hirings and resignations that would lead us right up to the first day of school. We actually are down to, I believe, 3 staff members we need. And we'll have those by August 22nd.
Thank you. And with that amendment,
One more, can I pull 2 items out separately?
sure, but we can do that actually when we go to those items.
Okay.
Okay, with that, with the amendment, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second? Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Diesel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. For Board President's Report, I have several items this evening. First of all, as I briefly made reference to, this is a business meeting. As you know, we've been operating with our first meeting of the month as a work session. The second meeting being the business meeting. We reversed that this month because of what just Dr. Lucas made reference to. We wanted to make sure that not only the hires and resignations, but also we have some contracts to be taking action on this evening and agreements. And of course, it makes sense to have that resolved before the beginning of the school year. And that way, once that action is taken at the beginning of the month here, we can start our next school year with a concentration, of course, on educating our children and moving forward with very critical strategic initiatives, which I will also touch on in just a moment. We will also be discussing a response to the turf committee, and I wanted to mention that ahead of time because I want people to understand that we did produce a letter, but it's a letter from 2 board members, Kevin and myself. And with the purpose of that letter is to help the turf committee proceed in their fundraising as those projects for the 3 high schools would potentially and hopefully successfully move forward. We will be referencing along with that a couple of uses of our attorneys this evening. And I think this is a good opportunity to mention that the district, Olentangy Schools, utilizes the expertise of a variety of attorneys. Of course, specific to their consultation they provide the district. So for instance, if Becky is working on the next bond that would go to the voters, she's of course going to work with a bond counsel experienced in that area. So we use attorneys for different purposes, specific to their expertise and experience they bring to the district. We do periodically release a request for qualifications to legal firms for those services, looking for their expertise and the background of their experience. And yes, we do ask that their proposals include building rates. I thought that might be helpful. Speaking of strategic initiatives, we will be using our August 23rd meeting, which would be the reverse of our work session, and this time we're calling it a retreat because we are going to change the location, and we thought that would be helpful due to the very important nature of that meeting. We are going to be discussing the continuous improvement plan, Dr. Lucas sent out to the board members a survey asking each board member's opinion of the success of the district so that they can use it for their internal discussions. We will be discussing that survey that the board members have been preparing. We will also be preparing for initiating a business advisory council. We'll also be talking about the local report card review and a review of Common Core. Another important item will be a board discussion of the board's governance, policies, and bylaws. And we will go through work session calendars into halfway through next year, 2013 year. Very important meeting. That could be our very long one, so we thought it might be helpful to, frankly, just change the location, give it a different venue, and that location will be the Delaware campus of Columbus State Community College, just north of us on 23. It will be in Moeller Hall, rooms 111, 112. Parking fees will be suspended that evening, and we're hoping that we have a very good attendance. These are vital discussions as the district continues to move forward successfully. And speaking of success, on behalf of the board, and Dr. Lucas will be speaking to this as well in more detail, but I would like to say thank you to everyone who was involved in the recent contract negotiations that went very successfully. Again, as we saw with the agreement with the Teachers Association, very much appreciate the partnership that this district so very much enjoys. And of course, the timing is excellent, again, as we move forward into the 2012-2013 school year. We can focus on our growth and the excellence of our education. And then I'll conclude with giving you a walkthrough of some of the key items that we're going to be looking at in our work session schedule. And again, we've had a three meetings over the last 2 or 3 weeks, put together a draft. This will go to the, well, it has gone to the board members. And let me give you some highlights. In September, we will be talking about a professional development update. We'll also get an update on transportation. And in preparation for the community forum that we are going to have, the board will discuss the parameters of that session. What kind of time do we want to establish, the rules of engagement do we want to establish, etc. So we'll have an open board discussion about establishing those parameters. In October, we're going to have the first reading of the 5-year forecast. And we will have a findings report from the Project 2020 committee. And we will conclude that evening with then the public forum. And again, for those of you who may not be aware, we are going to have the first of what we would see to be, at this point, once every 6 months, an open forum where we would have dialogue, questions are asked of the administration of the board, and the administration and the board can have a dialogue and answer those questions. Again, in October. In November, as usual, we will have an enrollment update from the Development Committee along with the consultant, DeYoung. And I'll mention into January, again, we've looked at the first 6 months of 2013, but the highlight I'll mention then in January of 2013, we will follow up on our discussion about the GPA requirements for athletic participation. So with that, that's the President's report. And Dr. Lucas, if you would please, Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the board meeting. Also, I would like to add in regards to the retreat, you do see that the book in front of you called the Leadership Challenge. We even give you an assignment prior to the retreat on the 23rd, and I'm not going to ask you to read the entire book. We're just going to ask you to read the first 2 chapters. And that's what we've also asked our administrative team to read, and that was part of the administrative retreat that we had last week. So you are provided with that book, and throughout the year, we will continue to reference that book. And again, I would ask that you would read that prior to the 23rd. Well, we have good things because, as you know, it's August 9th, and August 22nd we start, I believe. Or is it the 23rd? Which is it? Okay, 22nd. I know it's very soon. Guess what? When it starts, we'll know because everyone will show up, and we want to talk a little bit about the good things leading up to our opening day. Today, actually the last 3 days, we've been hosting the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System training here in Olentangy. We've had 43 Olentangy administrators, 10 from other districts, including ODE and the ESC, and of course ODE is leading that. I think we've talked about that whole evaluation system at the work session level in regard to the board, and knowing that it is changing, and of course we're getting our administrators ready to go in regard to that system. Capital improvement projects wrapping up. I think our people have just done a tremendous job in regard to the capital improvement projects. I'll mention 3 because they are 3 that we see every day if you drive by here. Well, at least 2 of them. One, of course, would be the softball diamond out here. As you have seen, we are moving that whole field that direction, and of course that came from actually a conversation regarding dugouts. We had a booster club that wanted to provide dugouts, and when you start looking at where that dugout will be in regard to where that road is, and we have added another school to this road, it's only common sense to say you don't want to build a dugout this far from a road that's going to be traveled extensively, especially by 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. So therefore, we are moving that field that way, and then once that move is done, and it will be ready by next softball season, we will then look at that dugout piece. Another project that goes right along with that is the walking path from here to Olentangy High School. Once again, if you've traveled this road, you know that over the years we've somewhat been conditioned to just walk or run on the road. And once again, as we add another building and traffic picks up, we now have, from a safety standpoint, the ability to walk from here to the high school on either a walking path or a sidewalk. Last but not least, I don't know if you've seen this, but if you have time afterwards or some other day, check out the cafeteria here at the middle school, because it is now able to have 3 lines. We've enlarged it, and it's very similar to all of our other cafeterias. So those are just 3 capital improvement projects that we have done right here on this facility, and of course district-wide. They are wrapping up and getting ready for the opening of school. Custodial and maintenance crews are putting the finishing touches on the buildings. We did have a report on this on Monday from Mr. Kerr, and we have been assured that on opening day we will be ready. And again, that will be here before you know it. Last but not least, as you recall or have seen, our students have already returned. Those that are participating in fall athletics or fall music, the band members have been to camp, the athletic teams have been to camp, and of course the dreaded 2-day practices have started. Scrimmages are beginning. I believe this week, if not this week, next, some of our other sports such as golf, they already start their season. So we will be in full swing prior to school starting. So we are back at it, and to be honest with you, it is always good to get back at it and get into the 2012-2013 school year. I want to say some things about negotiations. I know Mr. King already mentioned something about negotiations, but I think when you look at those action items on the agenda, we need to just kind of look back over the year to year and a half in regard to negotiations. And as you know, we have 3-year agreements with all 3 unions, our certified staff, our CMF, custodial maintenance and field techs, and our drivers. You know, that was that doesn't just happen overnight. And if you stay in touch with not only, Central Ohio, but statewide, we do know these are trying and challenging times. And I personally want to thank the board for the extensive discussions that took place leading up to these negotiations, whether that was a conversation I had with you individually, whether that was a conversation that we had in executive session. I think strategically we set goals, and I think we kept to those goals, and I believe everybody had input, and I believe everybody had valuable input, and this is basically the end of a journey, and I think it was a very successful journey. This whole negotiation piece, I think, as you can see by that bullet, it will help the district keep the 4-year levy promise. Now, if you recall, when we passed the levy, we were talking 3 years, and then we went one step further and said 4, and I think that was kind of the framework or the concept in regard to these negotiations, that look, this money has to last, and it has to last longer than the 3-year piece, and I think we're right on track to be able to do that. I, again, personally want to thank the board, but I also want to thank the union members, those individuals. They stepped forward and they sacrificed. I know we've had conversations here regarding insurance. I know we've had conversations here regarding salaries. They understand, and they saw and heard those conversations, and I think they did a great job throughout. I think one of our goals throughout this whole process, in fact, we developed a task force for this, was to say that we need to get to a consumer-driven health insurance with a focus on wellness. Now, are we where we need to be exactly at this day? Well, probably not quite. Have we made tremendous strides? Absolutely. Have we brought it in line with the private sector? Absolutely. Do we have a sustainable model? Much more sustainable than what it was. So I think those things take time. I think we made great strides. And again, I believe that everyone involved had that whole framework of 4 years and how can we help everybody to a win-win. Last but not least, the commitment to the community. As we go through those levy processes, we talk about efficiencies of running an operation or an organization, but we also talk about what type of product do we put out, the achievement piece. I know that I've said this many, many times here. I hear people tell me, run it like a business, and in comparison, we have the best product at the most efficient cost. And in the business world, I have a lot of people say, that's what I'm investing in. So we do try to keep that commitment to the community. And by the way, as we've said all along, this whole commitment to efficiency is never done. We don't get done with negotiations and say, okay, we're done. We know we have to continue to contain costs. But in regard to those salary increases and kind of what the rationale behind all that was, I think Mr. Marsh provided us with the research from the Society for Human Resource Management. And when you look at those trends, I think we're still below those trends. You know, when we say we want to stay in line with the private sector, for example, if you look at just from an administrative standpoint, if you look at the 5-year trends, Olentangy local schools, 1.5% increase trend over 5 years, private sector 2.5%. So we're still below that. Projections for the private sector upcoming trend, 3%. So we're still below that. And we even had some, getting down to the nitty gritty, we talked about, okay, what cities are doing better in the United States, or what groups are doing better. And when you see cities such as Washington, D.C., Houston, and Pittsburgh doing the best at 3.2, 3.5% increases, in cities like Philadelphia and Atlanta not doing as well, but still getting the 2.5%. And then when you talk about groups, what groups in the industry expect to see the highest salary? I think some of you on the board will be happy to know that, for example, accounting is one that is at the highest end, at about 3.3%. Consulting, legal firms. Lowest increases projected in the field, education, 2.3%. So we're still well below that. So as you go through that rationale and say, continue to hear, we have heard people tell us what's the private sector looking at, and I think that's the rationale and the research that goes along with that. So I think we're very happy. Hopefully everyone else is very happy, and we can move on. We now have labor peace for 3 years. I think that's a great thing for any organization, because anybody that has really been in on the business end and has really sat at the negotiation table knows and understands that once you get that off the table, then you can get down to the business of what you do best. And in our case, that's educate kids. So we're very happy in regard to the negotiation piece. Hiring update, we do regarding job openings, we looked at 20 and a half more people for enrollment growth. We had 56 to cover resignations, retirements, and leaves, which adds to 76.5 total potential positions. Of those, we have hired 66 so far, and we have 3 open positions. And they will be filled before we start school. In fact, they'll probably be filled by the end of next week. So we didn't fill all the openings that we did have, once again, getting back to that efficiency piece. We are closely monitoring the enrollment figures to determine if we need additional positions. And as you know, or if you don't know, I suggest you stand out at the New Student Welcome Center. We just keep having kids come and enroll right up to the first day or after. And of course, some of those new enrollments will make us or force us to hire additional. So we may be coming to you later after school starts with some additional hires just because of the enrollment increase. Projected enrollment, by the way, 17,658. What does that mean? That means that at the end of this upcoming school year, we should have 17,658 kids if the number of students that have enrolled to this date stay and the number of students that told us they were leaving remains the same. Now obviously, when you increase enrollment right up to the first day, some people also move right up to the first day or after. So those will be adjusted, but the projections show us that we should have 17,658 by the end of the year. Specific agenda items, we have a memorandum of understanding regarding the insurance start date, which is at no cost, and of course that refers to the certified piece. Originally, I believe the start date was September. It's now January 1. And of course, that's from a consumerism standpoint. We need to educate our employees. There have been some changes in the plans, obviously, and you have a choice of 2 plans, and we have had insurance meetings with our employees, of which we will continue to have throughout the fall, and we're going to make that change on January 1st instead of September. We also have the classified union contracts for approval, as stated earlier. We have salary adjustments for administrators and non-union classified employees. And as you know, I'm recommending John Betts as the Olentangy Orange High School Athletic Director. He did serve as a math teacher and head basketball coach and I believe golf coach at Orange High School. He will be the new AD. Last but not least, by the end of September, we have to approve a Calamity Day makeup plan. That's after the 5 calamity days that you receive for inclement weather. Last year we had 0, by the way. But if we were to go over 5, we have to have a plan. And our plan for 3 is that whole online piece that students know. Teachers have to have lesson plans in by, I believe, November, so that if that does take place, we know that you go to the website, you get your assignment, and you have a couple of weeks to complete your assignment. And then after that 3-day, then we usually come back at the end of the year. Our hope would be that we don't ever have 8 days of school canceled, but you never know. Common Core transition. We talked a little bit about this at our last meeting. We had some parent participation in regard to that. I met with parents for about 45 minutes after that meeting, and of course, since that time, we've had a parent meeting with individual parents from Shanahan Middle School, but just a little Common Core transition, because I'm going to ask Mr. Fetty and Mr. Rafe to come forward and educate the board on what this Common Core piece is all about. I also have a video from ODE that is about a 5-minute video that gives you a background of what this whole Common Core piece is about. Standards were adopted by 46 states so far. By the way, I believe Ohio was number 7 in that adoption. And of course, that whole Common Core transition is meant to better prepare students to compete in a global economy. And we must have that in place by 2014-15, which means we're gradually transitioning into that Common Core. Because believe it or not, our students are going to be expected to know, and the test is going to be based on the Common Core. So in lieu of waiting until 2014-15, we are now transitioning into that piece. Before I ask Mr. Fetty and Mr. Rafe to come forward to talk a little bit more about that Common Core, I want to thank our central office staff and our math department representatives, some of which are here this evening, for their work. They spent hours upon hours of time. We have some of the best math instructors going. They know what they're doing, and they volunteer their time to take us through this whole math piece. So there's been a lot of time invested and a lot of expertise invested. They were also part of that meeting with our parents, as I already mentioned, on Monday night. I've already mentioned the transition phase is over the next 2 years, and therefore before Mr. Rafe and Mr. Fetty comes forward, I'm going to ask Keith to cue video. We'll watch the video. I believe it's about 4.5 minutes or so, and then, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I've got
Go right ahead.
comment on the numbers you're talking about, where it was comparing the private sector to
Yes.
the education. I think you also have to take into, I mean everybody, take into perspective that that's not comparing apple to apples on some point, only in the fact that you have some educators, or many educators, getting 10% of their income being paid by taxpayers towards their own retirement, which would be an immediate 10% over anybody else in the private sector would get, or Medicare tax being comped by the district versus private sector. Most people don't get that comp, or sick day payouts, or schedules of teachers working 8 to 9 months a year, and trying to compare that to private sector who are working 12 months out of the year, and so forth. I just would like to stick that comment on there.
And educators also don't get the bonuses that the private sector gets.
Which
I just want to, the bonuses that they receive for doing specific work for those companies. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
Stop. Can you feel it? The forces that shape our lives are shifting. Forces that will affect our quality of life, our economic prosperity, our standing in the world. Change has happened, and it is up to our children to keep up. In the next 5 minutes, 39 babies will be born in the U.S., 155 babies will be born in China, and 260 babies will be born in India. China's students rank highest in the world in reading, mathematics, and science. Our students rank 14th, 24th, and 20th. India has more honor students than we had students. At least 18 nations have overall higher student test scores. And there is trouble at home. 42% of U.S. employers find high school grads unprepared for jobs. 30 to 40% of grads are unprepared for entry-level college work. That means we don't have enough qualified graduates to fill good jobs, professional jobs, high-tech jobs, blue-collar jobs, jobs that help raise a family. It means U.S. employers must cast a broader net for workers. So our kids will be competing for jobs against students from Shanghai, Stockholm, Singapore, and beyond. What do our kids need to catch up? Better reading and comprehension skills, better writing and communication skills, the ability to apply math concepts to everyday life,
and strong foundations in science and technology. Our kids also need higher order skills, creativity and innovation, analytical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to work well with different kinds of people. Wow! Where do we start? Meet the Common Core State Standards in English Language Arts and Mathematics. They outline what our students should know and be able to do in each grade. Think of them in terms of 3 words: fewer, clearer, higher. Fewer topics covered than in the old standards. But teachers drill deeper into each so kids learn more. Clearer definitions of achievement, so we know what our kids must accomplish to be ready. And higher expectations for what kids learn, so they can qualify for the best jobs out there. The standards are not about memorizing facts to pass a test. They emphasize critical thinking and problem solving, so kids can draw big picture conclusions, so they can create workable solutions in their adult jobs, so they can lead their peers worldwide. The standards can be tailored for all kinds of learners, and they line up with what colleges and employers need. 46 states have voluntarily adopted Common Core State Standards in English Language Arts and Mathematics. Our teachers are now being trained to use them. Schools should begin moving toward the new standards now, completing the transition by the 2014-2015 school year. How will we know if the new standards work? Through a new system of assessments or tests. Current classroom teachers are helping develop them. The tests will occur throughout each school year. The year will begin with a diagnosis of what students know, and the tests track each child's growth through the year. For language arts, that means analyzing increasingly difficult text and presenting evidence to back up conclusions. For math, that means they spend more time reasoning, problem solving, and applying math concepts to new situations. The new tests will be computer-based to give teachers results they can use quickly. We'll know in every grade if a child is on track to be ready, so students are much less likely to fall behind and more likely to graduate ready to succeed in life. Whose idea was this? The new assessments are not national or federal tests. States have teamed up to create them as members of 2 groups, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. With these tests, we can measure and level achievement across our state, our nation, the world, and they will be better tests than any one state could afford to develop alone. In the end, who's accountable? The test scores will help measure school and district effectiveness, teacher effectiveness, and how students are stacking up against their peers in other states and the world. So what can parents do? Parents can learn what the standards contain. They can understand the workplace their children will be entering, and they can support higher expectations. Now that you know about the new Common Core State Standards, let's talk.
You have music to accompany your presentation?
I thought I'd sing instead. I just rather than play music.
Mr. Fetty, can we hear from you?
So let's talk about what we've been doing here in Olentangy to get ready for the Common Core Standards and revisions so far. Sure, Mr. Fetty, you jump in. You can interject wherever you see appropriate. I'm more than happy to have your support. As the video said, Common Core Standards in Ohio were adopted in 2010. So our teachers, since 2010, basically the last 2 years, have been studying the standards and trying to see where they align with our current curriculum and how the curriculum needs to change and how their teaching needs to change. When we gave presentations to all 5 middle schools this spring, invited parents to come hear about the standards transition. English Language Arts, because of the way our courses are delivered in English Language Arts, basically all the students take a 6th grade language arts course, a 7th grade language arts course, and 8th grade language arts, and so on, all the way up through about their junior year when they can start going down the advanced placement track. Typically, the students take the same English course. But in math, they've been afforded the opportunity to accelerate into different math curriculums. And we started doing that in the elementary grades when we were teaching 5th and 6th grade math in the same year. So the language arts transition was just accepted as new standards. We called this I told the groups, this is one of those monumental shifts that happens in public education. I've been in the business for 24 years now. I remember when the 9th grade proficiency test came on right around 1990, and then Ohio adopted new standards around 2000. So it's now 10, 12 years later, and here we go again. This isn't something we stood up and raised our hand and said, hey, let's just change all the stuff we're teaching and all the stuff we're testing. We really like to start all new and see what we can do with it. It's something that's done to us. So it was something that we didn't have a choice on. We have to adopt the Common Core standards. The only choice we had in this transition was when. And as the last bullet mentions, because of the new assessments that are coming online, we wanted to give our students and our teachers as much time as possible to work with the new curriculum and be prepared for the new assessments. Not only the state assessments that we report on and measure as a district, but equally important, advanced placement tests are going to be changing, ACT tests are going to be changing, SAT tests are going to be changing, all of those type of things that affect our students. So we wanted to give them as much time as possible. Now the class that affects the most is our current 7th graders. So if you have a current 7th grader, they're the ones that are subject to the new state assessments. So currently our high school students take the Ohio graduation test. It's 5 different subject level tests. They have to pass those 5 tests, but they're tests that measure multiple grade curriculum. The new assessments are going to be end of course assessments. So they're going to have to take an Algebra 2 Common Core test and pass those tests in order to be able to graduate from high school, which again caused our sense of urgency to start this transition as soon as possible. So the Common Core standards, as the video said, they are more rigorous. And for us, more rigorous means that they're going to require a lot more thinking, a lot more application, what are considered higher order thinking skills. America's curriculum has long been labeled a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning we basically put our kids on a fast treadmill at the beginning of the school year and start teaching many topics. And we cover those topics and we teach those topics and we do it as quickly as we can because there have been so many. And what happens, they go to the next grade and teachers often have to reteach and spiral the teaching because the kids haven't quite honestly retained a lot of the knowledge because they haven't had the time to go into great depth. What the Common Core does is because there are fewer standards, it affords the teachers the opportunities to teach those standards to a much deeper level, and we believe they'll have a much deeper level of retention. They are internationally benchmarked, so we'll be able to compare our students against students from other states, and we'll be able to compare them against students from other nations. Now, I do take exception with the video when it shows, if we would rank our test scores against Finland or China or Singapore or other nations, the Olentangy test scores would not be where we are as a nation. So please know we're not 24th in the world in Olentangy. So, so what do higher order thinking skills look like? I'm going to put my teacher hat back on for a second and ask you to consider this problem. Now I won't call on any, well maybe I'll call on somebody for this one. This is a current assessment. It's an example of a 6th grade Ohio Achievement Assessment question. Arrangement of circles is shown. What's the ratio of shaded circles to unshaded circles? And we put this problem up there in all 5 of our presentations, and thankfully the parents got it. They got that one, no problem. There are 7 unshaded circles and 5, or shaded circles and 5 unshaded, so the ratio is 7 to 5. Good. All right.
Smarter than a 5th grader.
Yes. 6th grade.
So far, 6th grade.
So here's an example of a higher order skill and what would look like a 6th grade, a Common Core 6th grade standard. So there's a prehistoric context for the fraction 2/3 divided by 3/4 and usual visual fraction quotient model to show the quotient. So the teacher's going to have to spend a considerable amount of time describing what a story context is, what a visual fraction model is, and the students are going to have to spend a considerable amount of time being able to explain that, how they know they got it. What we found over the years is that, quite honestly, our kids get up to the high school level, or even through the middle school level, they can do the algorithms, they can plug and chug, they can sit down and do 20 problems, but you ask them about how they did it, and they have a very difficult time explaining it. And that's that job skill that the employers are looking for, is that students who are able to use their knowledge in an application setting. And again, here, these are things that lend themselves to group work and collaboration. So it is a whole new ballgame. So what did we do as we started transitioning here? We started in kindergarten this year, and our kindergartners were working in the new standards in math and language arts. Ohio, there aren't common core standards for science and social studies, but Ohio has adopted new standards in science and social studies. There's conversation going on right now at the national level that I would say we will have national science standards soon, common core in science. It's our intention, though, that we'll have all the grades, the other elementary grades for this year, so K1 to 2, worked on those last year, and then 3, 4, and 5 are implementing this year in language arts, science, and social studies, and are transitioning to math, and then 6 through 12, algebra 2 at the high school are jumping right in next year.
The challenge, the extra challenge at the elementary levels is that one classroom teacher is going to be transitioning 4 new curriculum over 1 to 2 years, whereas at a secondary level, typically a teacher teaches 1 course of study, so that's part of that too.
Right, so we felt it was more appropriate to give them more time, rather than our entire elementary division being a first-year teacher again. Now, the state still has in place our old assessment model, and the State Department of Education has assured us that teaching the Common Core standards will have our children prepared for the current assessments, because we're still going to be giving the current Ohio Achievement Test and the Ohio Graduation Test, so the curriculum for the next 2 years. Okay, so to speak specifically about math, because that's really been the area where obviously you fielded some questions on the math transition, and why we were very purposeful about how we transitioned math. We knew there was going to be problems with this transition. We especially knew there was going to be some problems with our current 6th graders who took pre-algebra. And the problems were going to be created because those students typically would have moved from pre-algebra to an algebra class. But the difference is that that old algebra class that we used to teach simply doesn't exist anymore because of the new standards. And the Common Core has a course they call Common Core 7 and Common Core 8. And in order to be prepared for the Common Core algebra class, which is significantly more rigorous than our old algebra class, we believe the students have to take Common Core 7 and Common Core 8. They simply have not learned enough of those standards to be adequately prepared for Common Core 8. And we want to make sure that they have that foundation. Our high school math teachers feel very, very strongly that our students need better foundational skills when they come to the high school level. That they've been allowed to skip curriculum in the past, have not learned it at a deep enough level, and then they find themselves reteaching a lot of the same curriculum in order to give them that foundation. I do want to say, going back to this for a second, as Dr. Lucas said, that the teachers who, every high school department chair, every middle school department chair, a team of 3 elementary teachers who have been math teacher leaders in the district, the building administration, gifted intervention specialists. We started this process in October and looked at all the different scenarios we could try to create in order to do this transition. We talked about phasing in, we talked about grandfathering kids, but it simply came down to a matter of we just did not want to take a chance allow children to skip parts of the curriculum anymore and potentially jeopardize their high school graduation or their performance on their college placement tests. I said to a group, I felt it was the equivalent of malpractice. If we allow them to skip the 7th and 8th grade curriculum, I really feel we'd be negligent in our duty. There is that much curriculum in those 2 grade levels. So for our accelerated students, what we've previously done in the past is we taught in 5th grade, we taught a 5th and 6th grade compacted math class. Basically all of the 5th grade curriculum, all of the 6th grade curriculum in 1 year. And if you can imagine, again, if I already, if you go back and say we had a mile, now we have 2 miles wide and 1 inch deep. The Common Core recommends accelerating students in the 7th grade, and that acceleration begins by having them take all of 7th grade and half of 8th grade. So it's rather than 2 years worth of curriculum, because there are fewer standards, it's now all of 7th and half of 8th. And then 8th grade is half of the 8th grade Common Core class and all of Algebra 1. So rather than 2 years worth of curriculum in 1 year, for our accelerated students, they're taking 3 classes in 2 years. So, as math teachers like to remind me, it's a better ratio. We really believe it's going to give our kids a solid foundation for success in the high school level classes and enable them to earn the highest scores possible on their college entrance tests. The group that came and spoke to you in July questioned, one of the major concerns was that students were past the point of learning the standards of Common Core 7 and Common Core 8, which quite honestly we just don't agree with that. We believe they have to, there are far too many standards in those 2 grade levels that haven't been taught and that we need to teach those. Their other concern was that in our previous math program, students who completed pre-algebra in the 6th grade and went to algebra and then took geometry in 8th grade could earn 2 credits in the middle school prior to entering high school. We went back to our math committee and discussed some additional options and came to the conclusion that we didn't want to limit students' opportunities to earn 2 credits in high school, so we devised a plan that will enable I hope it addresses the parents' concerns, but we devised a plan that will allow our students to earn 2 credits in high school as we had in our previous program. I'm sorry, excuse me, in middle school, thank you. So by affording them the opportunity to take geometry, the Common Core geometry class in the 8th grade. It does mean that they take 2 math classes, but with our new middle school schedule, all the students have a study hall in the 8th grade. So they just simply replace their study hall with their geometry class. Students who choose to choose to accelerate in 9th grade would simply double up with geometry and algebra 2, which is similar to what we had in our previous program. So again, the 2 overall overarching goals related to this transition are: we want to continue to be one of the highest performing districts in the state once the new assessment model comes on fully online, and our ultimate goal is to live our district mission of facilitating maximum learning for every student. And that means having them ready for college and the career of their choice. So, anything to interject? I spoke for,
Mr. Rick, there's a question.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, we're talking about the students that go from pre-algebra in 6 to the, was it Common Core 7 and 8 and 7?
Yeah, it's all of 7 and half of 8.
Okay, then they can take Algebra 1 and Geometry, they take both of them in the 8th grade year?
Correct. If they choose, but when you know when we met with the group on Tuesday night, a lot of it goes back to asking them to trust us, in that it's going to be the first year we're teaching this new curriculum. It's going to be the first year we're working with these new assessments. We're not quite sure how it's all going to behave. As we get into it, students who are able to excel will be afforded opportunities to advance at a faster pace. I think though is when, just using that one assessment question as an example, I really think the kids are in for a big shock.
It'll be their first year to learn the new curriculum and the new style of learning, the new rigorous expectations as
last question, is the ACT, or are the ACT and the SAT tests, are they adopting the same standards as the Common Core, the same kind of questions, or is it gonna, how does that fit in line with what they'll be asking?
That's all of the information we're being given. Part of the struggle for the teachers, and we do have a couple here who have, are just that invested in this whole process. That's part of the struggle. The state hasn't defined exactly what those tests are going to be. They haven't told us what the subject levels are. We don't know what the end game is, but they are telling us ACT, AP, because that's the curriculum the kids are going to be taught, they're going to change all their tests. And the whole idea is we want to make sure our students have as much time. Right now, it's not a high, especially for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, there's no high stakes involved. But once they start taking high school courses, it all counts. And once they start taking AP tests, ACT tests, it really counts. So we want to make sure that when we come online in 2014 and 15, everybody is adequately prepared.
So they told you supposedly the state supposedly will have it reflect what they said that we have to adopt.
Yeah, it's in legislation that the assessments will be, we just don't know the specific details of how they're going to look at, because the state has to design it according to the way the legislation is written. But we do know that the Common Core is written based on the alignment of college and career readiness standards, which are the same standards that the ACT has always been based on, so that the Common Core actually specifically preparing students for those same expectations that the ACT is assessing, which the previous curriculum was not aligned with the students.
The other piece of this, I think, is refreshing for us as a district, because we were accelerating so many students so far with our old curriculum. Our middle school curriculum didn't, most of our students were past where our kids were, and I would say our middle school achievement has lagged a little bit because our kids were beyond what they were being tested on. I think we found that also in the high school level a little bit with ACT results. Almost every one of our sophomores takes Algebra 2, and then they take pre-calculus as a junior. In the spring of their junior year, they take their first ACT test typically, and there's geometry on there they haven't seen since the 8th grade. So I know for a fact
saying that specifically.
Yeah,
I haven't
forgot
seen that
the
since 8th
geometry.
grade.
So while it wasn't, I think it was good to accelerate them and challenge them as much as possible, it hasn't exactly taken our ACT results with it the way I would have hoped.
A couple of questions. One of the questions that came to me is, on this track, can they still get to Calc BC senior year from a scheduling standpoint?
Yes.
And my son went through this obviously, and I'll brag on him a little bit, but went all the way to Calc BC, has always gotten good grades, 35 on ACTs, went to Vanderbilt his freshman year. Because of his scores and because of that on his math, they put him in multivariable, which is, 3 steps up. First C he's ever gotten in his life, and probably the most miserable class of his life. And so the preparation where you can say, okay, you're acing it out there, they're still judging it on such a different level when you get into the really highly competitive things. And you would have thought starting in 5th grade, doubling up on math and doing this, and pretty much 5 on both AP tests for Calc, still had trouble with the standard once he got into actually doing it in college.
Because we have roughly half of our kids we're taking this pre-algebra class in the 6th grade. By the time they get to their senior year and have the opportunity to take that Calc BC, rather than having 500 kids in Calc BC, we end up with across the district with about 100. So they just choose. I think anecdotally, a lot of them get burned out because they start doing really abstract, heavy math. Pre-calculus is a college course, and freshmen and sophomores doing pre-calculus. It's difficult, and I think they get burned out on math.
Yeah, he's got all history classes for
So,
sophomore year.
and
He's not taking any more math.
I have a daughter in that same boat. So,
Yeah.
And I think so that's the high school people feel very strongly about this Common Core transition, about slowing down I don't want to say it's slowing down the pace, but the increased rigor and the ability to go deeper and really strengthen their foundational skills will make them better math students for life, rather than just kids who can crank through 30 problems to become 30 problems.
You can take the multiple choice and just keep plugging in the answers to figure out which one's the right one. I mean, they learn all the tricks on how to get through those steps.
No, we're gonna, the other piece of the transition I think we looked at very strongly was it really just comes down to designing the program that best meets the needs of all of our students. We'll always have kids who don't fit right perfectly into the overall program, and we'll have to find ways to meet the needs of all of those individual students. But there are financial constraints to some of those things too. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of financial constraints, is it true that all of these new assessments, the state assessments, will be online?
Components of the assessments will be online. The state came out originally saying, stressing that point that they're going to be online. There will be online components for all those tests, but we don't expect that there will be no paper and pencil elements, because when you look at some of the expectations, there are written response requirements and things like that as well.
Well, I was just wondering if we could handle that, if every test is online.
Yeah, we've done a couple surveys, I think, in the past. The state continues to put out kind of audits of internal technology, right?
On technology,
Yeah.
yes.
He wasn't.
All online?
Yeah.
Is that what we're-
She's asking if we have the
If we
capacity.
have the capacity.
I think we're in better shape than most districts to be in a position to put all of that online. They're gonna give longer testing time in order to do that because did you already say that, Jack?
No, I was just.
They're gonna increase the testing window because you're gonna have to rotate students through that if you do that. If you do that in computer labs, you're going to have to give longer testing frames in order to make that happen. But I think that what they're finding, the state's doing assessments for all the districts, and I think that they're finding that there are many who are not ready or far more prepared than most. So.
And then, secondly is, I think the Ohio Department of Education has been doing a really good job of educating the parents, because I've been going there to educate myself on the new Common Core. And they have blogs, they have links to other websites where you can get additional information. They have videos, they have the curriculum all laid out. And I just noticed they're putting up the science curriculum too. That they're
Well, and I don't,
So-
and we put all that, when we started this whole process, we started with presentations in May at all 5 of the middle schools, went on the road, and we've had all of this information, the PowerPoints, links to ODE, curriculum crosswalks, all of those things have been on our website for an extended period of time. We did meet with about 50 parents, all from Shanahan Middle School, on Tuesday night for 2.5 hours. I think for the majority, strong majority, we have assured them, and they believe that we have a good program going forward. I think there's still a couple few that are reluctant and are trusting us as we move forward. And there'll be a couple few that we will have to continue to find a different way to meet their individual needs, but we're certainly committed to meeting the individual needs of our most gifted students also. So it was a great, I said to them, I appreciate the fact that they've asked those questions. It did cause us to modify what our initial plan was, and I think it actually strengthened it in the long run. Once we get through this first year of it, and we see what it is to teach that Common Core curriculum and work with those types of assessments, we'll see how we can modify it going forward. But again, the decision was about when we had to make the transition, and we very strongly felt that we needed to just jump all in and move forward rather than phasing things in, because that would only prolong it. And again, the current 7th graders, we just don't want to take the chance that they're not going to be prepared for these high school assessments.
I think it's really interesting. My sister's a professor at San Diego State in the graduate studies and teaches math teachers, got a PhD, teaches math teachers how to teach math, that we can have the same conversation now about, she said, what are you guys doing about Common Core? And I kind of laid out our plan, and she was like, that's good, because you're gonna be ahead of a lot of other districts, who, especially out in California, that are struggling to figure out how to get it implemented, in the time they need to get it implemented, and they're trying to really prepare these teachers to go in and teach at this new higher standard, and the teachers aren't ready.
And a component of our planning and doing all this over the past year was that some of our high school English and math teachers joining a consortium in Central Ohio of other high school English and math teachers and college English and math teachers to discuss curricular alignments, to ensure that there's perfect articulation between high school and college curriculum, at least in Central Ohio.
The work of our math teachers on this project has, I mean, in 14 years of being a school administrator, I would say the work they've done is as good as anything I've ever seen. I'm very proud of the work that they did. And they are just working, this summer has been nonstop. Right, Ms. Kirk? Very passionate. They want to get it right.
I would love to hook somebody or whoever's leading that charge up with her and have a conversation. So if you can get that name or get a name of someone who'd be willing to chat with her.
Dr. Lucas had given me a briefing the next morning after we had that group meeting. I'd just like to say thank you for the job that you did and your associates. The way and the manner you reached out to that group of parents, I think is great. Thank you for doing
It was funny because they all emailed us, and we had responses, so we had a sign-up sheet so we could check in, because we wanted to be purposeful about making sure we got back to everybody who had a question. If they didn't by chance make the meeting, say they were going to come, we wanted to make sure we got back to them. And one of the parents at the beginning said something to, make sure you go sign in, your name's on the list. I said, you're not on a list. You're not in trouble because you asked us any questions. It's okay. We like, defending talking through it, only, I think, we ended up with a better product here at the end.
And the middle school and high school teachers who helped organize that meeting and presented that meeting and worked with their parents deserve, all the credit for that. They did a great job of articulating what's been done and how their interest is for the best outcome for each student.
Mark, at the risk of digressing on this, because I think it's great work from everyone involved, but do we just want to briefly touch upon that? We know during that transition of 2 years, we're still going to get tested on OAA, and will we need additional intervention, any types of intervention during that 2-year period to match up those OAA standards with what they're going to get? Because we've had that challenge at the 8th grade math level, for example.
Again, I think it goes back to what ODE has told us, that because of the standards I think the standards that they're aligned in the Common Core 7 class will be aligned to the 7th grade OAA. So the OAA won't have as many standards as before. Boy, I hope they don't leave us hanging out there on that one. So,
well, that's just thrown out there because that is a transition period, and we know that there are changes taking place.
And the other, we talked about the accelerated path more so because that's where the concern was. But for the traditional path, it's now a Common Core 7 class, a Common Core 8, and where we were teaching every 8th grader algebra, the Common Core is now algebra is now a 9th grade course. Which again, our high school people will say they feel much better about, because the Common Core algebra is actually about half of old algebra 2. So there's just a lot more to it.
Well, we've traveled, it's almost been a 360. If you recall, when I first arrived, we had the conversation about algebra for all 8th graders. Remember that back? And we had a lot of conversations about that, and now it's full circle.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And does that conclude your?
That concludes my superintendent's report. I said 45 minutes.
Do we need a
Close.
motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, go get a cookie.
Stacy brought cookies.
That's right.
There's sugar in the back if anybody needs some refreshment. From my mother.
Ms. Jenkins, treasurer's report, please.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. I'm going to start out talking about the bonds, and then I'm going to ask Todd to come up and talk about the fiscal year end. I have the 2 action items on it. I sent an email out to all of you, but just to reiterate, the first action item that I have is a refunding opportunity that we have of about $25 million of our bonds that were sold way back when, I think it was between, right around 2002. In any case, we have already advanced refunded them one time, so they don't qualify for the typical tax exempt refunding, but because the market is such, we are able to do a federally taxable refunding on them and see some additional savings. The tax exempt versus taxable means nothing to the district. It's the investor that's buying the bonds and how they're treated for tax purposes. So it's not an exotic refunding, it's typical, it's just like what we always do, we're saving some money going forward. And then we also have the second bond issue that you see, we had issued notes, short-term notes last November. We want to take advantage of going out to the market on these refundings and roll these in. They will be tax exempt, and we'll issue those so that they're a long-term investment now instead of having that interest rate risk of every year having to try to get the notes. Really nothing unusual about those, but if there are any questions I can answer some questions, but I have David Tiggett from Fifth Third and Brad Sprague from Prism Financial Advisors in the audience to help if there's anything. Yes,
What's the projected savings?
David, would you like to come up to the podium?
Sure. Board President, fellow board members, my name is David Tiggett. As Becky stated, I'm with Fifth Third Securities. Currently, to answer your question, currently it's a little over 5% for both of the bond issues together. One issue by itself is a little over 9%, the other one is a little over 4%, but aggregately it's about a little over 5%.
And that'll, of course, will depend on the market when we actually go and sell the bonds. If there isn't at least a 3%, which is what our target savings is, we won't go through with this because you have to, have enough of the savings to warrant the cost.
Clarify, what do you mean by 5 and 9%? So 5% total cash flow savings or 5%?
It's the present value savings.
Of the cash flow savings.
That's correct. So gross savings is going to be, it'll be a higher number, but when you look at the present value of that cash flow, it's a little over 5.5%.
Any additional questions? Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then I will ask Todd to come up and talk to you a little bit about where we ended fiscal year 12, which was better than what we had anticipated. There were a couple things that happened later in the year that we didn't anticipate, but I always take those positive variances. They're a good thing and they help us with that 4-year levy promise. So with that, Todd?
Thank you, Becky. It's always nice to get to share good news. So like I said, we're just going to update on how we ended fiscal year 12. So we had some additional revenue as well as some cost reductions that ended up increasing our bottom line. And on the revenue side, 2 really significant items. In the unrestricted grants, that's our state revenue. The state government we've been getting some SFSF funding, which is part of that federal ARRA grant. They had some requirements towards the end of the year where they had to basically give that money out to the districts. So every district in Ohio got about $7 per pupil. So that's where you see some additional unexpected unrestricted grants funding. And then on the other revenue side, every June we get basically an income tax sharing agreement with Westerville from one of our tax increment financing agreements there. That came in significantly higher than where it was last year. That area there, just east of Polaris, continues to grow, which is helping our revenue there grow. On the expenditure side, across the board came in less than anticipated. The 2 significant items there, though, in the purchase services, there were multiple individual lines that came in under budget. A couple of the significant ones, along with that state foundation revenue we get, we also have deductions that come in there where they show up as expenditures. It's where our money is deducted to go towards community school students, special ed, tuition, and those kinds of things. Those are basically when we budget for those items, we're looking at trends from prior years. And in prior years, we had some really large deductions right at the end of the year for special ed type tuition and things like that. In fiscal 12, we didn't get that deduction, so that was almost $200,000 less, 200,000 of that 600. We also had some savings on the natural gas side, as well as legal fees coming in a little less than expected as the negotiations went probably a little quicker than expected. then the most significant one there in the other objects, we had anticipated, the other objects is where our ESC payment comes out of, which is where most of our special ed staff is paid for. We had anticipated a timing difference for 1 month payment, ended up being about 2 months payment, so that's the bulk of that dollar amount there.
So, I'm sorry, so I'm thinking about timing, is that gonna show up next year?
It's a good question. Typically, when we say it's a timing issue, then, really it's not a savings. It's, we saved money this year, but we're gonna spend it next year. The interesting thing this year is that encumbrances really came in where we expected in total, because in the other areas, not counting other objects, they were actually lower than where they typically would have been. Other objects is higher than where it would have been. So with encumbrances being right about where we expected, it evened out to where that truly is a savings overall. One of the most important lines we'd like to look at in the forecast, 6.01, where we're comparing revenue versus expenditures. So the impact of the revenue and the cost reductions means that revenue exceeded expenditures an additional $2.3 million. That $2.3 million, the revenue side, $463,000 additional revenue, cost reductions of $1.8 million. So that line 6.01 of $2.3 million goes straight to our bottom line, increased ending balance, increased beginning balance for fiscal year 13, and as Dr. Lucas pointed out, helping us, that's $2.3 million closer to hitting that 4-year levy promise. Any questions?
Thank you, Todd. We have started, of course, the 5-year forecast card process. We'll bring that to you in the beginning of October. We expect to have it to our finance committee by mid-September. We have several things in the next few weeks that we'll be pulling together from different departments and putting that into the forecast, along with these, assuming that the board passes the 2 negotiated agreements and all those board action items tonight, those will all be worked into the forecast, and we'll have that out. That's definitely going to look a lot better than it did in last October or even May.
Comments, questions? Thank you very much, Becky. And do we have any general comment, public participation?
We do not.
Thank you. We have 3 discussion items, and I didn't notice if Dr. Harrison he is here.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. So our first one is Dr. David Harrison is the president of, that's right, of Columbus State Community College, is going to make a presentation on our partnership with Olentangy Local. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me here. I heard Dr. Lucas say that his report is supposed to be 45 minutes. My board meetings are in the evening too, and by 7:30, my trustees are looking at their watch. So I'm going to go quickly.
They're supposed to be not the right phrase. They end up being, I think.
I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of our partnership work and culminate with some of the work we're talking about with Superintendent Lucas and his team, and then give any questions that you all may have. First of all, I want to thank you for having me here tonight. Partnerships are a big part of Columbus State's work, as I'll talk about, and the opportunity to have these kind of discussions is a big part of that. I also want to thank and acknowledge Dr. Lucas for returning my calls. That's a big part of success in my line of work, and he and I have exchanged some really good ideas. I think we're going to see pieces of that tonight. And I also want to thank you for your service. There's nothing that we do in our society that's more important than taking care of education for our children. I appreciate the time that you put into this. I know you're not doing it for the money. Columbus State has sort of nearly 30,000 students a year. We're probably the 2nd largest community college in Ohio. I haven't seen Cuyahoga Community College numbers, but we usually nip and tuck. We are the largest in Ohio with regard to full-time equivalent students. Our students tend to go a little more full-time. I've been here 2 years now and recognized early on what a great town, what a great region this is to do what I do for a living. It's a very sophisticated town with regard to education, including higher education, and it opens up a lot of doors in terms of creative thinking. We have a strategy that's built on deep partnerships. And tonight I want to go through a little bit about why that's important to us, highlight a couple of emerging partnerships that we have, and talk a little bit about what that might mean for our work together. As I mentioned, I came to Columbus State in 2010, which was an interesting time for a lot of reasons. Certainly the economy was in a difficult period of time, creating a lot of uncertainty for students and families, but also uncertainty for our institutions with regard to funding. And we were all battling burgeoning enrollments, but didn't have funding to keep up with it. At the same time, we had just opened our Delaware campus. About 2 months after I got here, we opened our first classes at Delaware. When I came in, I started a lot of conversations with my fellow college presidents. What I found was, like me, they felt like we were at an important time of change for higher education. And the business model that had gotten us to this point wasn't going to get us to the future. Ohio State clearly is one of our larger partners. And as we started to understand where they were and where they were heading, we realized there were some opportunities that we could work together on. As Ohio State's mission standards continue to increase, it was an important part of our understanding on what role that we would play in terms of helping our students transfer on to Ohio State. One of the things we knew together was that throughout the country, 25% of college students in America are what we would consider traditional college students, living residentially, going full-time, and not transferring. We also recognize that of students who earn a bachelor's degree, the average debt load was $27,000. So we recognized that there were opportunities that we had that we might be able to improve upon. Excuse me. Mark, can I get some water?
Yes, sir.
And the other thing we realized that there were too many students that were leaving college at all, were leaving college with debt that didn't have any credential at all. So those are the factors that led to the Preferred Pathway program. And Preferred Pathway is a partnership with OSU that guarantees admission for Columbus State grads to Ohio State. What that allows us to do as a region is really position Ohio State to become the most prominent research university in the world. And that's in all of our best interests. But to do that, they need to be able to recruit the most talented, the highest potential freshman class they can serve from around the country and even from around the world. So what Preferred Pathway allows us to do together is for them to pursue that goal and still allow local students with the ability and desire to earn a bachelor's degree at Ohio State. We've also partnered through the Preferred Pathway program to really deepen the advising model so that the moment a student comes to Columbus State as a Preferred Pathway student, they are matched up with an Ohio State advisor. Through the shared semester conversion process we've all gone through, we've worked with our faculty with theirs to ensure that our curriculum is aligned. So that our focus is not just to get students into Ohio State, we want to get them out. So when they transfer to OSU, they're transferring in as a junior in their chosen field of study. The focus in that regard has also guided our work with other colleges too, because we talk a lot about Ohio State, as well we should, but Central Ohio is blessed with some other really important higher education institutions, specifically those in liberal arts, private liberal arts areas. Otterbein, Ohio Wesleyan are two examples. We would also have deepened our partnerships and have similar pathway programs. And in some disciplines, most of their majors are Columbus State graduates. That's true at Otterbein, not so true at Ohio Wesleyan yet. In fact, we really didn't have a relationship with Ohio Wesleyan until our Delaware campus opened. In other ways, we didn't really have a relationship with Olentangy schools until our Delaware campus opened. So it really has opened up a lot of doors for us. But as we developed these higher ed partnerships, it became clear to me that this meant something for our K-12 partners. And if this is truly the way that most students are going to be going to college, we need to work with our K-12 partners to talk to students, families, guidance counselors, so that people can start to plan around this. As I came into role and started looking at some of the data, one of the data points I saw was that the class of 2010, the high school graduating class of 2010, of students in Franklin, Madison, Delaware, and Union counties, which is our service area, 900 graduates that year went to OSU's main campus as freshmen. 1,500 came to Columbus State. So that's an undertold story, and we recognize the fact, I talked about the completion numbers before, that a student family with a plan for completion is much more likely to complete a degree. And again, as I said, our focus is not just on getting students into college, but getting them out. So we started working with a number of superintendents, including Wade. And there were a couple projects that were already in the queue when I got here. One was with Gahanna Schools. And we pretty quickly, in the first few months that I was here, put together an arrangement for Clark Hall at Gahanna. I think maybe you've been there. And it's a great facility. Eastland Fairfield Career Tech Center is there as well. But in a lot of ways, that was more a real estate deal than an academic partnership. And where we are now, we've got a great facility there that we're still working on how best to put that to use for students. We had some work going on with Reynoldsburg in the remediation space, really working with them to eliminate or at least reduce remedial math. As that pilot project really started to show promise, Reynoldsburg opened their new high school, freed up some other space that they had, which they offered to us free of charge. So we're in the process now with them providing some renovation money, us putting a little bit of money into it. We're going to really enhance not just our remediation program, but a full dual enrollment program that complements their early college initiative that they've been working on for a number of years. So we'll be physically located at Reynoldsburg High School starting in January. Mentioned the Delaware campus, mentioned the Ohio State partnership with Preferred Pathway. Those two converged last year as we recognized the fact that OSU's Delaware Center was about 2.5 miles south of our Delaware campus. Pretty quickly, quicker than I would have anticipated something like this would happen, we decided we ought to just move in here. So that's what we did, and Ohio State, starting last year actually, moved their Delaware Center into our Delaware campus. We didn't have all the details worked out, still don't, but it's a commitment that over a 3 or so year period, we will align our curriculum so that there's not only no redundancy, but that Ohio State starts to move its curriculum into the upper division so that they may offer junior and senior year college courses at that location. Then as we started working more closely with Olentangy and realized, I'm from Central Ohio, so I had to learn about Olentangy's excellence, but realized that there were some interesting opportunities here because your 3 high schools are in very close proximity to our Delaware campus. The fact that we're there with Ohio State, obviously the largest institution in the state, largest or second largest community college. There was a scale there that we could do some things. And then as we recognized the great work you all were doing from a curricular standpoint, plus the growth that you all are realizing, there may be something there we ought to take a look at. So we started working with Wade and his team on putting together a dual enrollment option that was really dual enrollment with purpose. So that your students, especially those who are staying in state and who know that, could have a planned pathway starting junior or senior year to start to not just accumulate college credit, but to take college courses that are going to count directly to their degree. So we're working now on a package of courses that we would get started on for next year. We met last week, I think, to lay out a work plan this year that I think could get to scale pretty quickly. what that may lead to, I think we're all excited about the possibilities. It's one of the things we're seeing with Ohio State, just the fact that we are in the same building, and our faculty and others are working shoulder to shoulder every day. It really prompts a lot of other kinds of collaborative opportunities. I expect to see that when Olentangy gets engaged. We've got a one-building campus right now. So as I said, this could come to scale pretty quickly. We're in the middle of a master planning process at Columbus State. So as we start to think about what the next building or next buildings at our Delaware campus is going to be, we have an opportunity to look at that on a regional basis and look at Ohio State's needs, look at Olentangy's needs, look at our needs for growth, and really design that together. Socialize a couple of ideas with some key members of the legislature and others, and the governor has a big focus on shared services. That's clearly something that we're interested in. In fact, they used our Reynoldsburg model as an example in the report that the governor issued this year for shared services. I think we would have an opportunity here to take all of this and take it to an even higher, more collaborative level. It really creates an interesting experience for students and families. Last point, and then I'm happy to open it up to questions. While these point-to-point relationships have been going on, there have been concurrent conversations on how can we connect our regional assets and regional strategies in a way to really move the needle in a broader sense, to really address some of the numbers from a competitive standpoint that was in the video on Common Core. And in the next month or so, you will start to hear more about this regional strategy that we're calling the Central Ohio Compact. Superintendent Lucas has been a key architect of that in terms of really trying to lay out a regional strategy that reduces remediation, helps more and more high school students graduate with college credit, accelerates the rate with which students are earning, not just getting into college, but earning college credentials. And it's actually very exciting in terms of the kinds of collaboration that we're getting from public schools, private schools, K-12, higher education, and very importantly, the employment community, because there's a workforce development, economic impact framework around all of this. And we think regionally, working together, we've got an opportunity to do some pretty good. Sir,
If you're ready.
yes.
A couple of questions. One is so you have students that will be going to Columbus State and transferring over to Ohio State their junior year to Ohio State right after going to Columbus State. And then you also have students that are taking college courses, they're getting college credits in high school. Are those same students staying at Columbus State until junior year, or are we talking about a different mix of people?
That would be up to the individual student and family. So the arrangement we have with Ohio State is independent from what we would do from the dual enrollment standpoint.
Okay, so you can offer, it could be whatever the student needs.
Right.
So if they're advanced, they can get credits when they're in high school, or?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, all school districts, you want to create equal. And we go into this recognizing the fact that even if we go into a deep partnership with dual enrollment with Olentangy, that doesn't necessarily mean to get significantly more Olentangy kids are going to earn associate's degrees from Columbus State. And we know that. But if we can get students on a planned trajectory, they're more likely to be successful. We send a lot of students to Ohio State, a lot of students to Ohio University, a lot of students to Otterbein. They send us a lot of students too. So if we can make it a more planned and linear process, we think we're going to be in a better position.
Right, I mean, that's what I was trying to figure out. That's the mix, and you're talking variable depending on the student, what they need, either if they need remediation when they come out of high school before they can actually get admitted into Ohio State, they can go to the junior year and then transfer over, or take advanced courses.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you don't have the same remediation problem that some districts do. So the kind of the common model that we're using in a lot of places is we are working with them typically at the end of the junior year to do an assessment. And for students who are college ready, we will, with the district, put them on a dual enrollment path so they can earn some college credit their senior year. For students who aren't, we're trying to build our remedial program into the senior year so they're not using time or financial aid to pay for that.
So that sounds like a good program. The remediation techniques you're using, we should dish that out for a fee to the public schools, to the high schools that need it. Because that's exactly what they should be doing to prepare kids for college, instead of having to take extra time at a different level.
And that's really where this whole, that's really where this whole conversation started, because, you know, as I came in, I really wanted to take a look at how we could help more students graduate. Very quickly, we realized that so many of our students were coming to us unprepared for college level work, and that's what started a lot of my conversations with the school districts. And now we've had a successful pilot with Reynoldsburg in terms of remediation, and we're doing that now at, say, 8 or so high schools for next year. Karen Gray is our director of dual enrollment, and she's here to keep me honest. So if I said something that was going to cause her a lot of work later, I wanted her to have a chance to correct in real time.
Thank you.
One of the concerns, just because of going through this process again,
I
is
know what you're gonna
the
say.
idea of that a lot of the credits won't transfer to other schools if it's a high school teacher that's teaching the class. It has to be a college level teacher. We heard that over and over again in our college visits. So that would be just setting that expectation and understanding that parents have to understand, based on if they're not staying for the Columbus State program but going to another school, to understand what credits will be accepted and won't be accepted from an AP standpoint, from a, you know, whatever transition based on how we're going to structure it. That they have to have that knowledge of, it depends on where you're going, whether or not that's going to be counted as a credit.
Yeah, Ohio's dual enrollment model has changed in recent years, and is really in the process of changing, really along the same timeline as your Common Core. And part of it was driven by the fact that many institutions have just converted to a semester calendar. But what that allowed us to do is really take a look at our curriculum together. So for the last 2.5 years, our faculty were working shoulder to shoulder, not just with Ohio State's faculty, but with other public institutions, to make sure that Math 1152 is Math 1152, whatever it's taken. The faculty credentials piece is a part of that, but there's also a transition period there. And that was part of our meeting last week with Wade and his team, and Karen and some of our folks have since met with the Ohio Board of Regents, who are also trying to keep up with the change. So we've got a transitional process so that high school faculty who may not have a master's degree in the discipline, which is really the higher education credential, will have an opportunity from now in 2016 to get that. Because really the best model for us in dual enrollment is when the high school teacher is fully credentialed and can operate as a higher ed teacher as well. And that's what we're working towards. And again, we've got some time, I think, to help that along. It's a great point, though. Now, but you know, for students who want to go to Vanderbilt, you know, dual enrollment may not be the best approach. And as I said, it's really an in-state model for the most part. But even our private institutions in state, especially the ones that are working closely with us, Wesley, Audubon, Capital, are really recognizing those same courses in the same way public institutions are.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Very exciting times.
I think our county is very lucky to have, you know,
Yes.
Columbus State right here in our own backyard. And, you know, being president of the Delaware Area Career Center, we're also partnering with Columbus State, not just for the high school, but also adult education. And so I think that's going to be a great partnership there as well, that
That's a
taxpayers.
whole other talk.
Exactly.
Say, I'm about to
Taxpayers
start my
will be
class
able
at work.
to-
Columbus State's coming out
taxpayers will
on
be able to
substitute.
take
You can't stay for
advantage of.
that.
So stay tuned.
Mr. Gordon is going to give us a presentation on the energy project.
Mr. Gordon's going to give more of an introduction, and then we'll ask Mr. Stevens
So do we have any?
to give a presentation. As you all are aware, we're constantly trying to be more efficient in all cost factors, especially with the energy. two parts to do that is physical changes, which we took on with our energy project that Mr. Kurt's been working on for a couple of years, and we implemented many of them this summer. The second piece of that is behavior change. We're really overseeing that, and we haven't been quite in a position to do that as well as we would like. Energy education brings a model that kind of answers or fills that need for us. There's a lot of companies out there, like some of the engineers that we've worked with over the years that do the physical part. They do a little bit of the behavior modification and some of the environmental changes, but they're not really experts at that. They're more the physical trying to do the other. In this case, energy education really works with changing the environment in the district, what people are doing, the ways we're doing things, and follow that. As part of this process, we met with energy education. They came with great recommendations from a couple of school districts that I talk to quite often, and in addition to that, again, it fit the need that we were trying to fill. We took them, after meeting with them, we took them to a cost efficiency committee, which is made up of district members in different fields, a lot in accounting and business, and vetted that, which started out what we thought would be probably a 20-minute conversation, ended up being about a 2-hour, 20-minute conversation with them. So they were pretty interested and really vetted the process and what it is that Jim's presenting. As part of that, before we brought it to the board, we kind of wanted to get their blessing with another group to kind of say, okay, we think as administrators we're maybe looking down the right path, and let's get some more input. So with that, I will turn it over to Jim C., Minister of Energy Education, let Jim present what their company is doing. I think long term, and Dr. Lucas can correct me if I'm wrong on this, what we're looking for, I think from the board, is that if we decide to move forward, at some point we're going to have to enter into a contract with energy education, which will be large enough to bring back and ask the board to approve it. So the next step after this, that's what we'll do, and I would expect that if all things go well and we decide to go forward, it would be in September timeframe.
Thank you, Jeff. I promise not 2-hour and 20-minute presentation tonight. As Dr. Lucas told me, I had 1 minute after his 45-minute presentation. So what I'm passing out, y'all have already gotten the proposal book. See some about. We're not going to go through that page by page. I've got a very short PowerPoint presentation, kind of explains what New Energy Education is, and I like to run through that. And these are the slides from it, so you can take some notes on these particular slides. We are a company headquartered out of Dallas, Texas, but we partner with school districts to reduce energy consumption 20 to 30%. We've been doing this for 25 plus years, and we've worked in over 1,231 school districts in 48 states. They won't let me go to Hawaii to try to get the Hawaii school district, but I keep asking them to. So, program results, our usual results are in the 20 to 30% range in reduction in consumption. And keep that in mind, because that's what this whole program is based on, is reduction in consumption. The program is totally funded out of the utility budget. There's no capital funds. We have 45 plus right now experts and specialists with over 400 years of combined energy conservation experience to work for us. And I'll get to that in a little more detail. And we've worked in over 20,000 facilities. Y'all are probably familiar with the Energy Star logo. We've been Energy Star Partner of the Year 2009 and 10, and a Sustained Excellence Partner in 2011. If you went on their website and looked at the types of businesses that help clients get building certified, we've gotten the most K-12 building certified across the nation over the last 8 or 10 years, I believe, as long as they've been keeping records of it. This next sheet, oops, something fell in line there, sorry about that. These are our current Ohio clients, and if you draw a line under West Geauga on the left there, everyone from West Geauga and above is what we call out-of-contract clients. They are no longer sharing in any savings. They're not paying us any fees, but we are still partnering with them and whatever their needs are. From West Geauga down Berea and the whole right column, we're currently in contract clients somewhere within their 4 or 5 year contract cycle. Berea was actually one we just signed about a month ago. So there's different types of clients that we have throughout, and I'll explain the out of contract as we go. We see there's basically 3 ways to reduce energy. Buying it cheaper, which you've all been doing. You mentioned earlier there's some savings on the gas. More efficient infrastructure, that's the capital investments, your House Bill 264s, you've all been doing a great job on that. And then using less energy. This is where we come into play. We strictly are organizational behavioral change with a technical expertise bent to it, and we want to come in and change the culture of your school district. Looking at this is from Dr. Wayne Turner, and he is a professor at Oklahoma State University. He's done studies, he's worked in energy for over 25 years, I believe now. We looked at what can you gain from different approaches. And you see there, you know, changes in consumption is the largest piece of the pie. You can gain 25 to 30% reduction. Installing equipment, 12 to 14. And negotiating better rates, 5 to 7%. So you can get changes, but again, combining all those is the best ideal way to go. So what do? Energy education, we have developed a process over the years called the Transformational Energy Management Process that has 4 main components. The components are, number one, first, leadership and focus. The leadership starts here at the board and the superintendent. We don't go anywhere unless we get approval from. We don't backdoor sell. We don't come in and just talk to the facilities people. We start at the top because that's where the leadership has to come from. We then, as we get on board, we hire and have on-site local energy specialists. In this case, it would be 2 full-time energy specialists that would be employees of energy education. They would be working specifically for and only Olentangy School District. They provide hands-on support on a daily basis for the program. They are trained, 90% of their training is on-site. It's our consultants coming in on a weekly basis, working with them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours at a time, whatever it is. Our consultants are made up of, like I said, we have 45, all of them are certified energy managers. We have 9 professional engineers. We have approximately 150 certifications across all of them, either in HVAC, building recertification, irrigation experts, boiler experts. We've got basically any need that you may have or arise, we can bring into the facility. When we do sign a contract with a facility, we do assign an implementation lead and a data lead as consultants. They're the ones that will be working intimately with your energy education specialists in all aspects, but they have the capabilities of bringing in whomever they need for whatever help. You see a note there on national conferences. We do have 3 national training conferences a year that the energy specialists attend, and actually anyone from the district can attend also. These training conferences are a Sunday evening through Tuesday. They are packed from 7 to 7 with either keynote speakers, roundtable discussions, workshops. We have a separate discussion where all the Ohio energy specialists get together. And it's usually Ohio and Indiana in the same room, and they discuss amongst the peers what's going on in their districts and things. The energy specialists, while they are here working, their job entails 2 main things. One is they will be inputting all the data, your utility bills, into the software that we'll talk about here in a second. That takes about 15% of their time. We break it all the way down to the meter, so you can tell by meter, by building, exactly what you're using in every situation. The rest of their time is out in the field doing 20 to 30 audits a week and spending time communicating the program, whether it's be attending staff meetings, whether it's one-on-one communication. Let me back up before I get into communication. I'm running ahead here a little. A big part of our plan is the assessment and planning. This is a dynamic tool that we come in, we assess every one of your buildings, develop an energy management plan for that building that's constantly changing. As we wipe out recommendations that you put into place, then we look at something else. One thing we stress is we do not affect the environment of the teaching environment. We don't look for energy savings there. We're looking at off hours and things of that nature. So we're not going to come in and tell you got to turn your thermostats down, you got to turn your thermostats up, freeze the kids out, or heat the kids out. That's not what we do.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
go right ahead.
Is facility needs along the lines of these windows need to be caulked? I mean, is it actual building sorts of things like they do in a home audit?
We do not do any, we do not recommend any capital improvements. Our improvements are more about when things are running, how they're running. Is there procedures set up for when you open up your kitchen staff opens up their kitchens, or they walk in and turn everything on right away? It's all procedural, behavioral based, things of that nature. You won't have us come in and say you got to replace all the windows. You may end up doing that. You may end up doing that, but that won't be.
It's just similar to what they do in a home audit. They're coming in and saying your siding has issues or your windows.
Ours is more about the people using the energy than about the buildings using it. Even though the buildings do use the energy, it's more about how the people affect the use of the energy. The communication part, this actually does not require a lot of extra meetings. This is mostly one-on-one communications or whatever meetings and means of communication you already have developed. The energy specialist will attend staff meetings, will work with principals of buildings, will work heavily with custodial maintenance staff. They will be doing board presentations. We have a regular setup of board presentation to show you how the program is doing. So what we look for in an energy specialist is two main things. Number one, they've got to be very trusted because they are working very odd hours, as I'll explain. Secondly, they've got to have great communication skills. They've got to be able to get around the district, know people, know the buildings, and be able to talk to people about the program. The last part of our program that makes ours a little unique, you keep the score. We don't tell you how well you're doing. The measurement and verification is a licensed software that you license from a third-party vendor. You keep it on a personal computer. It doesn't take any other computer, but the energy education specialist personal computer, they upgrade it for you every year. We have nothing to do with that. The data does get downloaded to our portal so we can look at the data and see how you're doing and help you develop graphs and different things of that nature for programs. But this is very good. It's probably the best. It's always tough to say the best, but it's probably the best energy management software for K through 12 on the market today. It's out of State College, a group called Good Steward Software. They've been in business for over 30 years, and they've developed this software. So when you put it all together, what do you have? The methodology that we have is it starts at the top. We require, once we get a signed contract with a client, that within the first 30 days we have an energy policy and guidelines. We have templates of those that we will share with you, but you make them specifically for your school district. The guidelines are the meat and potatoes of the program. Once those are established and we do the customized energy plan for each building, then the process starts with the audits, the communication, the education, the measurement results, and a constant feedback loop. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that's just going to, boom, be there and be done. It's not a one-time thing. If it was a silver bullet, it'd be easy, but it's not that. It's many things. A couple key points to the energy program. As I said before, our top priority is comfort and safety of the students. You all are in the business of education. We don't want to disrupt that. We look for off hours, downtimes, weekends, things of that nature for energy savings. No capital outlay. This is funded through the current utilities budget. There's no capital outlay needed. The catalyst comes in the form of the energy specialist. I talked about the two of them here on site, working full-time just for the energy program. The measurement tool that I discussed, it is based upon industry standards. There's international guidelines that Good Steward Software has developed for them. That tool also, the beauty of that tool is it just doesn't compare bills. It allows you to look at apples to apples. In other words, it has algorithms built into it that can adjust for weather, heating and cooling days, for rates, for 28-day billing cycle versus a 30-day billing cycle, so that you're looking at exact situations. An example I used, we had a new client up in Minnesota this year that the month of December, they were supposed to, their program showed in their baseline year, because you establish a baseline year that you're judged against. Their program showed in their baseline year in December, they had 400 MCFs used. Well, their December bill came in, they had used 325 MCFs. They thought, bills are lower, we did great. The program told them they should have used 315. We didn't even make our number that month, because they were treating the buildings as if it was January, the weather was telling them it was March. So their expected use was way below even what they were supposed to use. So the program didn't show any savings that month at all. And that's what the program does. It takes everything into consideration and compares apples to apples. So you don't get credit for things you didn't do, nor get gigged for things. The program doesn't get gigged for things it didn't do. In this situation, the contract here is a guaranteed shared savings. I've got, I apologize I don't have it on an overhead, but the financial matrix I think you all saw. I've got copies up here also. This would be a 5-year contract, 50-50 shared savings. If we do not show any savings, yes, same one. If we do not show any savings, we do not get paid. So when I say we, it's the program. And you see on that matrix also the energy specialist will be paid for by us. The only investment you would have would be the software. The software, what you see in that brownish tan line across the bottom, the first 5 years of that, that is actually guaranteed also. So if we don't even save you that amount, we're going to write you a check for that. Now that's not going to happen. We wouldn't be in business if we wrote checks. I can tell you straight out that is not going to happen. The projections you see there for the district is about that's right about 20% based upon your last year's utility bills. A little bit, maybe 21, 22%, I believe. Fast track period, let me talk to that real quick on the financial matrix there. We come in right after contracts are signed and get going right away. But we want the district to have positive cash flow. So for the first 6 months, there's no shared savings at all. There's no fees that you have, not even software fees. So every penny that you save goes back into the district coffers. So you're that much ahead right off the bat. And it takes us about 6 weeks to get the energy specialists hired. So you got that lag time and then getting them up and running and going. Now that doesn't mean to say we're not doing anything in the district. Immediately after we sign the contract, one of our engineers is in here talking to one of your maintenance folks, getting an understanding of your district. How many buildings do you have? Let's walk the buildings. Let's see what you've got. Let's start talking utility bills. How do you get them in? How are we going to get them in? So we start working right away, but you start saving right away. And there's no shared fee. Yes?
So we pay for the software, and then the rest of the payment, the contract is if we save money?
If you save money. And 50-50 split. Whatever you save on a monthly basis, based against your baseline.
And how did you say the savings are calculated?
Savings are calculated from, you establish a baseline year, a 12-month baseline year, agreed upon by both parties. That baseline year is what is you're currently having right now. If we were in contract, we got contract by the end of the year, it'd be this year baseline year.
We agree on a baseline.
You would agree on baseline year. The contract, I believe, says the previous 12 months. So it looks as close to when the contract is signed as possible. If there are things that have been done in that baseline year, and Jeff and I have talked, you've done some lighting projects, things of that nature.
Automatic light switches?
Anything that is done to save energy can be adjusted in that software program, temporarily or permanently. So if we were to contract, if you were to shut down a building, we can take that, make an adjustment for that building. If you were to add a building, you can add that. If you have an engineering study saying that the lighting is supposed to save you 10% on, you can work that equation backwards. That is taken off of the baseline. So we don't get credit for things that you've done that's going to be getting you savings down the road already. It's we want actual usage is what we want.
And so the savings are rate adjusted, so is it the cost per cubic foot of gas fluctuates that gets cleansed out of the software?
Yes and no. The savings rate is a blended rate of all what you actually pay. So it's what you're paying for utilities times the savings of the amount saved in consumption. But it's what we call a blended rate. And a blended rate takes all the different factors into whether it's the different savings or not. If that's a huge difference from the baseline, then again, you make an adjustment in the baseline. You make an adjustment in the baseline. Because we don't want to garner savings just because all of a sudden rates went down. The program's doing nothing there. It's the same way we don't want to do it the example I use is back in winter. Someone joined us 2 years ago in January. Their baseline January was maybe a 31-day billing cycle. 2010 January was a little tougher than this year. Rates were a lot different. All of a sudden, January 2012 comes along. They look great. Bills are lower. Well, the program didn't do any of that. It's a mild winter, maybe a 28-day billing cycle. Those are the types of things that third-party software does for you. And that's why we have all of our clients invest in third-party software. We don't want to keep the score. We can tell you how well we think we're doing, but with you utilizing that third-party software, it's you punching in the numbers, that software counting out, making the adjustments for it. There's a couple pages on the software back on page 94 in your book that talks to that software a little bit more also, and I can get you more detail on it also if you want. This is what we talked about in a nutshell. The program costs 50% actual savings for years 1 through 5. First monthly fees are deferred the first 6 months. That's the fast track. Software is a 3-year payment of $10,940 and then an annual update of $42.66 starting year 4. The bottom 2 bullets, district energy manager, I just put on there to show you what kind of position it is. It's a 12-month, round-the-year position. The job description includes night, weekend responsibilities, and it performs 20, 30 audits a week. Since we will be hiring that person and paying for that person, we still collaboratively hire that person because you know the people from your district. It's not us coming here and throwing someone on you and saying, here's an energy manager. We do a job information session. Our HR person works with your HR person on the hiring process, the interview, so on and so forth. So, and the expenses for the energy manager. Any questions? I'm sorry I ran through it quick, but yes.
A couple of things. Real organizational behavior change only happens when there's incentive on the acts of the people themselves who are the ones not saving energy or wasting energy. Is that something that the district has to build into a program, or do you have, not necessarily incentives, financial incentives, but how do you really affect behavioral change on the people that are
Two things that come into play there. One, we have had school districts make it part of evaluations. We have had school districts do that for building principals. That's new. We've had a few do that, but it's first year wasn't paid attention to.
Instead of a carrot,
second year, second year was paid attention to. More so, what we do, and the example I'll give is the old refrigerators, coffee pots things. Every school district we get a client wants, first thing we want to do is get all those out there. Just it's an energy drain. We don't want to do that the first 6 months because our program is all positive. So what we want to do is start working the program, establish the program, get the messages out as to why we're doing this. Through the reports, show the savings, equate the savings into, it could be this assistant's job, it could be this, it could be, the money could be sent, going this way. Show where the money is being utilized, and then 6 months down the road, all of a sudden, people start thinking, you know, do I really need that in there? And if I don't have it, now that I understand how much it's going to save, because there's 1,000 of those in the school district. So that's how we work. We don't incentivize per se, but we show through the results what monies you're saving. We do have graphs that show how many teachers' jobs that can mean, things of that nature. So that may be where you're going, but not personal incentivizing. No.
Yeah, it's just organizational
Yes.
change, and culture
Yeah.
change only happens if the people change.
Well, interesting, and
That's what I do for a living. Sorry.
I read your bio, so I saw that. It was coming. But we've had organizational behavioral people look at our program. We had 2 professors from Arizona State look at our program just recently and asked, why are we so successful? And they came back with the reason we are is because we cover a lot of the bases that need to be covered in organizational behavioral change from the standpoint of support from the top, policies, procedures, guidelines, procedures. For, when we say we're doing audits, they're just not out walking buildings. They have an audit form that they're following through with. We follow up on it. It goes to somebody to report it. So there's follow-up through all this and communication through all this, and that's why we're effective. That's why we're effective. Yes, Kevin?
2 questions. So one is, could you give us maybe some examples of the magnitude of the behavioral change? To get these kinds of numbers sounds, trying to get my head around.
I understand.
The magnitude of behavioral.
I'm going to do this for you. I had a 9-minute video to show, but because of the time constraints, I'm going to send it to Jeff and let him send it to you. It is a video not put together by us, but put together by Loudoun County, Virginia. They've been a client of ours for 19 years. It speaks to that probably the best. They talk about fiscally what they've done, but they talk more so about what they've done culturally over the past 18 months. And they've taken it to, you know, extremes. They just said, we're going to do this, then do this, then do this, and they've gone further and further. So that's the first thing I think. I think that'll give you a good feel from another client. I'm trying to think culturally in Ohio, Hudson, Ohio, school district up around Cleveland. When we went into Hudson, they were at 92 cents a square foot, cost per square foot. They've been doing energy things for 20 plus years. Their business manager came to us in the first session, not the board meeting, but in the first session, says, you sure you really want to do this? We're not probably, you know, this is going to be a very tight district. Their facilities manager, Chuck Schilling, he came to us and said, I need this. I've done everything I can do. We need to get, if we're going to get better, this is what we need to do. We partnered with Hudson. Hudson's a smaller school district. As you know, it's a 4-year, what we call fixed fee contract, which is still guaranteed. First year at Hudson, because we had a slow start, we didn't make our number. We wrote them a check at the end of the first year for the difference. We're still, they love us, we love them, we're still partners with them. We're working second year, we see the numbers coming, we're garnering the savings in the second year. And it just took, they already had the culture. So it took us to, how do we get that culture to the next level? We don't, but that's the 8th check we've written in the history of the company. So I don't want to scare you there with writing checks, but that's the type of thing that we can do, even in a district that has that. In fact, we'd rather come into a district that has something started already. They've got the ball rolling. They've got some talk about energy conservation, things going on, where we just enhance that, is what we do.
So the second question, is 50-50 kind of a standard split, or
Yes.
is there alternatives to be considered?
There-
I guess it feels a little.
The reason that 50-50 is because of we're picking up the energy specialists, salaries and benefits.
For 5 years.
For 5 years, yes, for 5 years. Now, at the end of that 5 years, a lot of mature programs can be run with one energy specialist, in your case. It may not take two. It may not take two, but to get the program up and running, that's what we, some of our bigger clients, Oklahoma State University is a client, they've got, I believe, 6 energy specialists. Hines Community College, we've actually started making contact with Columbus State, so we're trying to get in there a little bit. But yeah, in our larger clients, it's a 50-50 split just because we're assuming the energy education salary.
My other, sorry. My other recommendation, just to give you a little bit of a hard time, is getting the book to my house, opening it up and seeing that it was about energy. I would have rather received that electronically instead of killing all those trees. So I'm hoping this is not a paper. I'm hoping this is not a paper, and that one of my kids actually opened it and said, "Energy. Well, this is very green."
We are going that way. We're actually Energy Cap is going to be web-based here in about a year. The third-party software. We're going to tablets, and we're a small company out of house.
Then don't print so much. Electronic will save you money.
Questions? I was going to ask about how you deal with the cultural side of it too, so I think that's been covered pretty well. I would like to see that video.
Sure. We'll set it to check.
Understanding that a significant part of this is culturally oriented, as I understand it, in the report. I am wondering, and Jeff and Andy, and have you talked about whether this would be something good to run by the development committee, get an opinion on at least the system side of it? I mean, obviously you wouldn't be addressing the people side of it, but is this something that might be good for the development committee to take a look at?
We have not run that by them because of the didn't really involve the physical nature of making changes, and that's why I want the route of the cost efficiency committee because of that.
Okay, okay. I thought, given the expertise of 2 or 3 members of the committee, and as you know, one of them in particular, having gone through our buildings and done an analysis over several years, might have some input as to items such as the potential savings chart. But cost and efficiencies make sense too.
And also figuring out what employee groups you could bounce this off of, because it is, at the end of the day, going to be based on some of their behaviors and actions. And culturally, what do we do around recycling and all those sorts of things? Maybe an employee committee.
We talked a little bit about that at the committee also, and we pride ourselves in being able to come into just about any situation, and it takes 2 things: hiring the right person first off, but then getting the right person trained and having the support. Without the support, I wouldn't be standing here if we didn't feel we have the support.
Great.
So, that's but we pride ourselves so we can make it work.
And Jeff, what would you like to hear from us this evening?
Nothing this evening. We've got a contract review. It seems I've gotten a positive response from the board. We've got a contract review and agree on, but in a future meeting, we'd ask for approval of the contract. Obviously, with that amount of money, that's not something we would approve without bringing it to the board.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. So one, Jeff, kind of bringing this forward, this is kind of thinking that we should be kind of enforcing. The issue I have is, question is, how do we know we're getting a good deal, right? So have we vetted this with other providers? Do we know that this is the best provider for us? Contract of this size, I'm ballparking $2-3 million in fees over a 5-year period. We should be making sure that that's a competitive process, to make sure that we get the best possible structure.
Kevin, if I can address that, we do RFP. We do RFP if that's a way the school district wants to go. We have no problem with that. From the standpoint of competition, from a true behavioral change, I've got some in Minnesota. Luckily, they're not doing a very good job, and I've got some previous clients calling us. Most behavioral change programs that you're going to see like ours are tied on to want to sell you some capital. That's what it, and they're starting to do that because they see that's an aspect of it. But it's they want to be, let's come in here and do a whole new HVAC, and then we'll tack on this. I've got a couple school districts that I can refer you to that have done it that way. Feel free to call any of our clients. Perry Local right now is going through that up in, they're not a client of ours. We've talked to them, but their business manager and I just met this past week, and they're going through exactly that. They used a competitor because they needed capital equipment, used both. Now they're into something that they're not able to show us any results. And that's what I would say, any competitor that you go to, make sure they have some type of tool that measures, that really measures it well, because that's the key to all this.
We had that same question from the cost efficiency committee. I've spoken to several of the other school districts they've worked with and looked at the competitors and through ASBO and ASBO, there's not really competitors out there that do the same thing, especially in Ohio. There's the engineers that do the physical changes, do the House Bill 264s, and then tack this on as a help. And on the OSFC, some of those projects, they bring people in. What they want to do is come in and tell your people how to do it and look at. They don't provide the people on staff or in the district to come in and do the work and do that. That's why, again, another one did have a lower percentage, but they didn't provide people to come in and do the work. So having gone through that and looked at that, I think from that standpoint, it's fairly standard where we're at with it. We had a company in today that was talking about a couple different things, but again, they didn't have the breadth of what we're trying to do. The other thing we looked at is the school district in Indiana, Carmel, that I went to, that we modeled the 410s after. They did a similar program to this, and they really struggled, and they spend a lot of money taking a hired retiree and taking out the training. And so they spend a lot of additional money going out trying to find the training things to do, whereas these people come in with engineers on hand to provide the training versus having to constantly go out and try to find something and not get up to speed as quickly and not gain savings as quickly because now you've brought somebody in that isn't getting the training that they're getting here. That's why I'm looking at the different programs live like this, because you get in, you're up to speed right away. You don't have a 2 or 3 year learning curve of trying to bring somebody in-house, and we've talked about that at one time of having somebody in-house, bringing somebody in and doing it. But then you're constantly sending them out for training, and when will you get to the point that here you can hit the ground running with.
And from the training aspect, if the energy specialist were to change after year 1, year 2, year 3, for whatever reason, we'll come back in, rehire, no additional cost, and retrain, whether that's in year 2 or year 10. So we walk with you. When the contract is over, as long as you keep an energy specialist hired and maintain the software, we will stay there as a consultant for you on an as-needed basis at no additional cost.
So are we comfortable as a consensus that further investigation is warranted? Does that help you? Do you see direction?
One last, Jackson Local, when they actually approached us, we met at a few, their superintendent sent someone out.
Jackson and Maslin.
Jackson and Maslin, yes. Cheryl Hastrick was the superintendent at the time. She actually had one of our big board members say, find something for us from Energy Conservation. After all this searching, this ended up at our doorstep. And just last week, Minneapolis Public Schools called us too. They had a competitor in there that doesn't work in Ohio, but so there's others out there. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our third and last discussion item this evening is an update on the status of the turf proposals. There are 2 parts to that. Number one is, you may all know, there was a bid opening for the turf project. A best and lowest bidder has been identified, and there is ongoing investigation of the holding of those bids as we look in regard to the timing that the turf committee would need to continue their fundraising. So that is an open discussion. It is not closed. There is no reason for the board to accept or reject the bids through legal counsel, and again, using, in this case, an attorney that works with our district in construction matters. He has determined for us that we can hold those bids for a while longer and that discussion is ongoing with that low bidder, best bidder, to ensure that indeed that can be held for a while to help the turf committee move forward. So as that progresses, especially as the turf committee progresses, there'll be more information on that. The second part of this update is Kevin and I were talking some time ago about crafting means by which we could provide some direction to the turf committee without necessarily doing things like rejecting the bids or taking a vote, etc., but at least provide them enough information where they can continue solid fundraising efforts. And Kevin had suggested we might write a letter. So I got with Becky and I asked her, once Kevin did a draft, to please review that with yet another one of our legal counsel, again, with experience in this arena. Again, we're looking for attorneys that have strong backgrounds in the areas that we need them, to look at the letter, because we wanted to ensure, as he was careful to point out, that nothing that we would do as a board can obligate or create a situation for some future board. You simply cannot do that. So we took an attitude with this letter. She's reviewed the letter, suggested some changes to it, so that we can keep it informal and still meet the requirements of the law, if you will. So with that, Kevin will be so kind as to read that letter and for everybody's benefit.
It's again, as Mr. King indicated, the intent of the letter is in essence to provide a framework or some direction to the turf committee, just as the board would provide a framework or direction to the audit committee, to the development committee, or frankly any other committee that's doing work on behalf of the district in terms of what we would believe success might look like in terms of the outcome of their work. It's not, if they've indicated, a binding vote to this board or the future board, but in essence, I think it does meet our responsibility as a board to provide that group with some more firm direction on what we believe successful work. So that, I guess I'll read the letter, because I think it's something that will be not become public document. So it's, dear members of the Olentangy Turf Committee, as President and Vice President of the Olentangy Board of Education, we'd like to thank you for your diligent efforts to raise the funds to install turf fields at Olentangy's high schools. We truly value your hard work and dedication, and in return, we feel we should provide you with a framework of what we believe will be the committee's best course of action as it moves forward. We feel the committee should return to its original plan of 100% gifting strategy as presented at the September 14th, 2011 Board of Education meeting. We do not feel the committee can count on any financial contribution, financing, or loan from the district. Furthermore, no district property would be used as collateral for the turf field projects. We feel it is reasonable for each high school community to be able to move forward on turf projects independently. It is our hope that the turf fields will allow more community members to enjoy Olentangy stadium facilities with a wide variety of activities throughout the year. The district will determine and provide the appropriate level of maintenance for the turf fields. Again, we thank the members of the turf committee for the countless hours that have gone into researching, planning, and fundraising for this initiative. We appreciate your dedication to the school system and look forward to a successful result from this campaign. So it's in essence, that is the letter that we'll be sending to the various turf committees.
So it's saying, go ahead, raise all of the money. We support your fundraising.
We are not voting to
Right.
say we support.
Okay.
We are, two board members are suggesting that this is a means by which they could continue the fundraising effort.
Okay. So when they're fundraising, are they fundraising for 3 schools? Or if they got enough for 1 school they would start? How does that work?
There will be a lot, based upon this letter, each school will have the same opportunity to raise money. It's my understanding of the turf committee that each school is going to be able to go at its own pace. So if one school is ready first, they're going to be allowed to move forward, should this board agree to move forward first and then second and third. It wouldn't, I think historically it's been kind of an all for one draw, and I think now they're all given the same opportunity to raise money, and if they're gonna continue to work together, but if one's ready ahead of the other, the belief is they should be on.
But that's a turf committee call. I
Yes.
mean, what they decide to do with the funds they've raised so far, how they decide to split those, whether they decide to return those, the board would have no, when it's put this way, it's a gift to the district. So what the turf committee decides as far as all for one or one for all,
Well, it's
I
not
think
now.
this, well, if, it depends.
Apparently it's not, no.
Apparently, I mean, that's a turf committee decision, that has nothing to do with the district or the board on how they decide to organize and go forward and raise money, and it's just setting clear the expectations, a letter on their behalf from the two of them, that it would have to be a completely gifted, and that the board would not put in a requirement that, currently from this letter would not put in a requirement that all three schools have to be done or no schools have to be. It's my understanding of your letter.
We're letting them make that decision. We're suggesting that they make that decision. It would be similar to the presentation we had for the swimming pool in some regard, and also the proposal for the wrestling room, where they come in, it was gonna come in as a donation, and then the district would take ownership from that point on. We think that the district would be in control of the construction contracts, managing of those construction contracts, et cetera. So it would become a district project. The board, a board, would take action on accepting the gift and moving forward. And that's one thing I like about it. It's consistent with other proposals that have come in. In fact, I think I even mentioned, maybe I did, about, there was a dugout proposal for one of the baseball fields. Similar action, gift, the district takes control, then on you go. So that's one thing I like, is the consistency as well.
Yeah, in those situations too, much smaller scale.
Oh, certainly.
Each facility's been allowed to make enhancements to their facilities at their own pace, based upon their boosters' ability to raise money. So it's kind of this independent approach, which is kind of consistent with how other, albeit smaller scale projects happen.
Okay. Public participation number 2. Do we have any
I have none.
requests? Thank you. All right. Item 11, board action items. I'll present items A through E, and is this where, Adam, you wanted to pull something, or was it somewhere else?
It's on the treasure action.
Okay. So, I would bring forward items A and E, if there would be a motion to
A, E, or A?
A through E, whatever I said. Items A through E, board action items.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion? Yes, sir.
For the union contracts, I disagree with two of the parts of the contract, which would be the pay the fair share, forcing the non-union members to pay the union fee to be employed with us. I don't think that's fair at all. And the second one is the seniority, where we put employees' jobs at risk based on how long they've been there versus performance as a term of their contract. So you'll have, if you have employees that are doing or performing better than older ones, they could be potentially laid off before the seniors.
Our classified non-union workers don't pay.
They do.
They do?
Yeah, it is a fair share, but it's a fair share state, so I'm not sure that it's just that it's negotiated.
But
Right.
either way, I just
But that's-
stay out of the agree. They could take it out if they wanted to. We don't have to do that.
Other comments? Questions? Would you please take the vote, please?
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. King?
Yes. And Becky, please, treasure action items.
Did you want C out for separate vote?
Financials? Yeah, take that one out.
So I will present treasure actions A, B, D, and E for approval.
A motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And discussion.
Of course, over here.
Sure.
Wait, is this one for A through E without C? Or
Yes,
Right.
that's not correct.
Right.
Okay. I'll just comment that on the bonds, I had good communication with Becky. She returned my calls and explained the saving money by refinancing the bonds. So anyway.
I'd just like to highlight the donations, amazing amount of donations from the athletics and from the Orange Middle School, and I'm just amazed every time I see the numbers of the things that come in from these booster groups in the support of our schools and our kids, so I just want to thank them for that.
Thank you, Susie, for that. Please take the roll.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And then I present treasurer action item C for approval.
Motion, please.
So,
Second.
Second.
And discussion.
Let's look right here. Not that I don't approve of Becky's accounting. I don't have any problems with or issues with that. I just don't personally agree with allocating money for pickup on the pickup and other excessive spending, and so I'm voting no against the financials.
Other comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. O'Brien?
yes.
Ms. Dunbar? Oh,
It's okay, yes.
oh, you did, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have you as second. Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. King?
Yes. And superintendent action items.
Present superintendent action items A through D, including the addendums added this evening.
So moved.
And second, please.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right.
2 points. One on the hiring of John Betts. Nothing against him personally, but on the contract, I don't agree to pick up on the pickup or paying his portion of the Medicare tax. And then the second part is more of a question, I guess, is on the Anthony Milano, where he's resigning. What was the reason for his resignation? Was he under investigation right now?
No, he was not. He actually took a job somewhere else.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. King?
Yes. And we will go into executive session. After that, we will not have any further business except to officially adjourn. We will go into executive session to, as permitted by section 121.22 G1 ORC, to consider the employment and compensation of public employees. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Your time, Becky. And any discussion?
8:24.
And please call the roll.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. Thank you for your attendance this evening.
Please eat cookies.